Hey, I'm Kevin and today we're making coasters in the Kevbot workshop. Welcome back to the Kevbot workshop. Today we're using mixed mediums to make 3 different types of coasters using scrap wood. We'll be using resin, metal, and cement to make these coasters. Let's just jump right into it. First, we're going to create this river coaster. During all of this river table craze, I wanted to incorporate something like this into my work. This project is perfect for anyone wanting to get their feet wet with the live edge resin popularity that has emerged. I first started by taking off the bark with an angle grinder and using a flat disc to smooth it out. I then brought it to the joiner to flatten one side and square it up to that flat edge. From there I can resaw this down to 3/8 inch thick boards and try to yield as much as I can to create a couple of sets of coasters. Each time I made a cut, I brought it back over to the jointer so that I can have a flat edge against the fence. Since they all had one flat side, I can bring these over to the planer to clean them up and bring them down to their final thickness, which is about 1/4. If you notice, we have a lot of extra wood here. These coasters are going to be 4-inch by 4-inch coasters, and so I have to decide how wide of a river I'm going to give them to determine how much I need to cut off the sides. To rip these down, I use the painter's tape and CA glue trick to attach them along a straight edge so I can run them through the table saw. Now that I have the stock for the coasters ready, I can start making the form to fit it in. This is a pretty common technique to make a resin form. Using melamine, I created the bottom and sides of a box. I picked up some Tyvek tape to line all the sides. This helps the resin come free from the form after it cures. In the future, I want to try this with regular packing tape or something because Tyvek is pretty pricey. All of the woodworking community uses this stuff, so there may be a reason why this works better than other kinds. To assemble the box, I just drilled pilot holes and drove in some screws. The last thing to do is to seal up the corners with some caulk to prevent leaks. As you can see, the pieces fit perfectly. I did use some clamps though to hold them down as they may try to float in the resin. I am using a 2-to-1 ratio epoxy from Total Boat. It is super easy to use and it comes with their own special pumps that dispense the resin and hardener in amounts needed. For the blue river, I'm using 2 different black diamond pigments. Cobalt blue as the main color and Caribbean blue to swirl in. And of course, if you do a resin pour, you have to film it or it doesn't count. I hit the top with a torch to pop all the surface bubbles and did a second pour after the first one cured. For the black river, I used a black liquid pigment and did the pour in one go. After I gave each one a few days to cure, I demolded them and because of the tape, they popped right out. On the blue river, I used caulk to prevent overflow. On the black one, I did not, and you can see that it did not turn out well. I didn't put caulk on it because I was having trouble removing it at first, so I took a belt sander to it and it was a lot easier to remove afterwards. To clean off the rest of the board, I sent them through the planer, taking very little off with each pass. To make it easier with sanding, I did the majority of sanding while it was in one piece. I started with 100 grit and worked all the way up to 320 grit. I cut them all to their final size, gave them a slight chamfer, and sanded the resin by hand up to 2000 grit before finish. Before we move forward, if you're enjoying this content, hit that like button because it really helps out the channel with the YouTube algorithm. And if you do so, thank you very much. And let's get right back to it. Moving on to the next coaster, I'm calling this one the Exploded Walnut Coaster. This one is very easy and straightforward, but I'll still bring you along on the journey in making it. I first started by ripping down a piece of walnut that had some good looking figure in it. Then using my crosscut sled, I cut these to 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch pieces using a pencil eraser to keep it secure. To connect everything, I'm using stainless steel dowels normally used for shelves. I tried making a jig to drill all the holes, but the pieces weren't lining up correctly. So I just found the centers and used a brad point drill bit to drill the holes. You can see here that I marked all the pieces so I can remember where they all go and where I should drill the holes. Before assembly, I gave everything a quick sanding. Using a belt sander made it a lot easier. To attach them all, I used 5-minute epoxy and tapped them into place, making them into rows, and then I can combine the rows from there. These all didn't completely lay flat, so I'll show you how I went about fixing that. With the CA glue and tape trick again, I secured these to my workbench and carefully sanded until the side was flat. I didn't apply much pressure and I made sure I didn't stay in one spot for too long. If you had a drum sander, you could send them through and flatten them out. As per usual, the best part of the project is watching the finish being applied. The last coaster here came from inspiration from a project done by Evan and Caitlin here on YouTube. I'll leave a link to their video in the description down below. They created cement coasters using a silicone mold just like this. Me being a woodworker, I wanted to see how I can incorporate cement coasters with wood. I got started by making a form just like they had and sprayed it with automotive filler paint. To fill the seam, I used CA glue and activator and gave everything one more spray of paint. After that had dried, I sprayed the inside of the form with silicone release spray so it would be easier to get the mold out. I am using a 2-part silicone mold for this that you can find at your local Michael's craft store, making sure that I mixed well. So we poured this about 4 hours ago and now it's firm to the touch. So now we can go in and demold this and see how it turned out. Cross my fingers on this one. Even with the mold release spray, it was a little difficult to remove the mold from the form. And I think I sprayed a little too much as it got a weird swirl on the bottom. But it didn't affect the end product. Now I can start getting the wood ready for the coaster. This is a piece of hickory left over from the board game box I made. I chose this because I thought it would look nice next to the gray of the cement. I resawed the board down the middle and used the planer to get it to the final thickness of 1/2 inch. Now I need to cut these into circles. There are many ways to do this, but I use the table saw method. With a fixed center, you can cut off the corners of a square and keep removing the corners until it's close to a circle. Then you just spin the piece until it gets round. Be very careful when you do this. One more time, I am using the CA glue and tape trick to hold down my pieces to the crosscut sled so I can cut these in half. Well, actually not quite in half. So at this point, we have all the materials assembled that we need for making the coasters. I have my mold right here that I've been keeping clean with a piece of saran wrap here. I have my pieces of wood that I can actually get two different kind of coasters, some with a little more cement, some with a little less cement. Right now, we are ready to actually start making these. However, I had to put a little bit of thought process into it. I was thinking about how I was going to actually join the concrete to the wood and making sure that it is done correctly. So I'm thinking of kind of like a rebar type of effect. I'm actually going to throw some screws into the ends of here so that it can hold on and grab onto the concrete. So the other thing I had to think about was moisture. And so wood likes to soak up moisture, and it's gonna try to pull all that water out of the concrete. So what I'm gonna do with these pieces of wood is I'm gonna coat them with a thin layer of resin. That way we can create this kind of barrier between the cement and the wood. These coasters are a little thicker than the others because I had to make sure the head of the screws would sit below the surface. I even angled them slightly down to ensure that. Not only will this help the cement to grab on, it's going to make it a little stronger too. At first I coated all the sides of the piece with epoxy for a couple of test coasters. I then thought this was too much as I knew I would have to sand off a lot more afterwards. So I just coated the side that would be touching the cement and some of the bottom and top if there was any overflow. I used this advice from Evan and Caitlin to get this precision grout by Quickcrete. Pro tip, add a little water so you don't have too much like I did on the first batch here. For the first couple, I added the cement right on top, but that proved to have more air bubbles than I wanted. You can remove them by vibrating the molds. For the next batch, I put cement in and then lowered the screws down onto it. This worked a lot better as there was less chance for air pockets. After I took these out of the mold, I hit them with some pretty aggressive sandpaper on the belt sander to get the top and or bottom flatter. Just like the rest of them, I worked up the grits to make them smoother, and then I applied finish to the wood. You can get finishes for cement, but I didn't for these because I thought they can just handle the condensation from glasses. Potentially a colored liquid from juice or soda can stain the cement, but these are so easy to make I could just make more. For all the coasters, I put cork on the bottom as to not mar any surface. You can purchase pre-cut cork like I did for these circles, or you can get rolls of cork and cut them yourself. All of these coasters are great weekend projects and they make great gifts. Plus, they are super easy to do. Again, if you like this content, hit that like and subscribe button for more projects coming out in the future. If you have a question, comment, or an idea of a project I should do in the future, leave it in the comment section down below. You can see more of my work here or on my channel. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in the KevBot Workshop.